So please give us a warm welcome for Alvin Wang Graylin.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. So we're actually fortunate today because this is the last session in this room, so I can actually do some Q&A. I've actually done, this is my 5th session here in the last 2 days, but we've never had a chance to do a Q&A, so I would like to have more interactions if we have time. So if you'd like to stay longer. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the myth and reality of AI because there's so much misinformation about what this technology is and what it promises for us. So let's just get into it. First of all, everybody's heard of generative AI, but generative AI is actually just on a spectrum closer to this end of where AI is possible of getting to. I've been working in this space for about 35 years, and we started with good old-fashioned AI, where you're essentially taking expert knowledge and putting into algorithms. And we're moving into narrow AI, which is really training in a particular field, agentic AI, which allows you to take functionality with AI, and then sovereign AI, which is more governmental views of nationalistic AI. And then AGI and ASI, artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence, as kind of the long-term destination. And that long-term actually is not very far away. Everybody's been working on, really all the labs are working on AGI as the focus, really creating a technology that can replace human and work in our cognitive labor, right? There's a kind of different definition from different labs of what that means, but hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that in our discussions. And you'll usually hear the downside of AI. When you hear talks, people are like, oh, they're going to turn us into batteries or turn us into paper clips. I like to actually more present the potential opportunity of AI to bring goodness to the world, to bring greater understanding, to help our society be more productive so that we don't have to spend our time in the office or in the factory to be able to create products, to allow us to have the free time to do the things that matter to us, to solve our energy issues and climate issues that has been plaguing our society. Let me move this out of the way a little bit. And then also to help our health issues so that we can live longer, live healthier, and really get the value out of this technology. So all the things that have been in sci-fi movies and books for the last several decades, or maybe 100 years, will soon be potentially a reality. And it could bring us into a world of abundance. Unfortunately, most of the direction of how our leaders, both government and corporate leaders, are really taking us towards more a target of using this technology to bring dominance to a particular country or individual or place. And I hope that we can learn our lesson from Nikola Tesla, who reminded us that science is but a perversion of itself unless its ultimate goal is the betterment of humanity. And we need to look at it on that broad scale of how can this technology be used beyond helping a country or company win, right? And another person that I would like us to learn from is Mark Twain, who says, it ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And that's unfortunately the case today, is that most people think they know what AI is and what it means, and most of what they think they know is actually not true. So what are some of the examples of this? We need to question what we know. We need to question the expectation or the assumption that by increasing compute alone, we are going to get to AGI. And that's actually no longer the key. Even though everybody in the world right now, all the countries are trying to race to build the biggest data centers and the largest clusters, that's actually not the key in the near future of what will bring success, to bring us to AGI and to bring us to societal success. A lot of people tell you AGI and ASI, oh, those are just science fiction. It's not going to happen. Well, I can tell you based on the data and based on how we see the trends are going, it will happen. It will happen faster than we think. And even if we don't get to AGI, this technology is going to transform how our lives work and how our economy works. So we don't need to put all the hopes on AGI, right? No one can win an AI race. That's something that I think a lot of people don't realize, because every single country thinks that they can win, and particularly the US thinks they can win. And that assumption that you can win is putting it into a position where it's over-indexing on trying to be first to invent. And that first to invent actually is going to get it in trouble. There's a lot of people who are concerned about energy use related to AI. I'll tell you why it's not really as big of a concern. And there's also the biggest fear from the safety community of AI is that AI is going to take over. Robots are going to be our overlords. I actually think that that's one of the smaller risks that we have. And every country is trying to get to sovereign AI because they think that that's going to make them safer, when in reality, that actually creates every country into an enemy of every other country. And AI and robots will take our jobs. So let me just say that. AI and robots will take your jobs and my jobs, and it's okay. We'll actually be happier if we have the proper social safety nets so that when it does take over, we're not reliant on our jobs as our only source of income and our only source of subsistence. If that is taken care of, then we will all welcome that to happen, because then we can spend time on our families, on our self-improvement, on making sure the environment's well, on learning more, right? That's where we actually would have a better use of our time than making PowerPoints every day, right? Regulation doesn't always mean stifling innovation. I think that's something that a lot of people, particularly in Europe, are concerned about. They say, hey, we have so much regulation, we're so behind, we're going to lose. And I can tell you that actually, maybe having some proper, reasonable regulation at the right time is exactly what we need as a society and as a continent today. And global UBI and a social safety net is necessary, it is possible, it is affordable, and if we don't have it, we are going to go into a world of chaos. Lastly, we must and we can jointly develop AGI. If we don't jointly develop it, we will create a biased AI that is bad for the world, right? And we must think of the world as a non-zero-sum game. If everybody's thinking that by getting there first, we will win and take something from somebody else, or they will take something from us, that fear of losing is exactly what's going to cause us to be failures. We've been scaling AI for the last 15 years or so, mostly on 3 things, which is parameter count, training compute, and training data. Actually, I should probably move this so you can see a little bit better. Oop. Oh, thank you. But those things are only going to be, it's already served this purpose in terms of where the value comes from, because it's really a logarithmic scaling that we are getting from these areas. And that means you go up by 10x your data, or 10x your compute, and you might get 2x increase in your performance. Going forward, really the increases will come from algorithmic changes, inference compute, and distillation and quantization, which means that the longer you run something, the more smarter it gets. The more you change the techniques and tweaks, you can get increases. And these come in exponential or linear type of increases. And distillation is also exponential, allowing you to take larger models and make them smaller so they can run on your computer and your phone, on your pocket, or the one on your head. Right? And soon, actually already in the last 6 months, the biggest breakthrough is really about using AI to tie into tools, so that all the things that we have been using, what's made us successful as a species is our ability to use technology as a tool to magnify every human's capabilities. We will soon allow these AI to have these tools so that they don't have the hallucinations that we are afraid of. They won't have, they will be able to get to the precision of all of the tools that we have used ourselves. Right? And so as these things increase, as we get to the next phase, probably the most likely areas where the benefits will come from is more complete data, by sharing it across the world, better techniques, and then better tool use. And you can see pretty much the trend is we are going up to the right and faster getting there. And essentially all the skills that we see as humans, we're about 80% is the kind of a good human, that they're either there or will get soon be there. And in terms of how much time it can take, right now AI is able to get to about 2 to 3 hours of unassisted time from a human to be able to finish a task. In some tasks, it could probably replace junior data analysts maybe a week of time today without any supervision. In about another 1 or 2 years, it will be able to take multiple days of work and be able to have autonomous ability to complete them at a high success rate. At that point, pretty much most junior white-collar work will be replaceable. It won't be replaced necessarily, but will be replaceable by AI. And this is going to come, whether it's, according to Sam, it's this year, or, Demis is, in 5 years. But these are the heads of the current labs that are working on these solutions now, and they generally agree within the next 5 years, we will see this. And if you look at where, AI was a year ago, very few, actually, the only one that was over 100 was '01. And now what you see is that almost all the labs have AI that have IQ over 100, and GPT-5 that just come out now has 148 IQ. That's 3 standard deviations from norm, which means it's smarter than 99.8% of humans in terms of the IQ test. Right? So we're moving from 50 percentile to 99.8 in 1 year. Just imagine where it's going to be in another 1 or 2 years. Okay? Unfortunately, the problem is that we're all spending our time looking at these kind of headlines of, we need to dominate the race, we need to win, we need to have a Manhattan Project, we need to win the war on AI, and everybody's positioning this technology, something that could have all of that promise of bringing good and abundance, but we're positioning it as something that is a weapon and as a race that will create a zero-sum game.
And so that's the most important part strategically. Where AI developers develop their technology, it will run best on that technology. And so over time, as AI diffuses around the world, we are not alone. The United States is not alone. When China starts to aggressively diffuse their AI technology, so long as all the AI developers are in China, I think China Stack is going to win.
So even Jensen Huang, who's the head of NVIDIA, he's saying that over time he actually expects China to win because China right now has 50% of all of the AI developers in the world. Right? And they're training 5 or 6 times more every year than Americans have. And at the end of the day, when I was talking earlier about where the improvement will come from, it will come from more the techniques and the algorithms, which means humans being able to help produce those things, not the compute. It's very difficult now. You already have 100,000 or 1 million GPU data clusters. If you increase 10 times just to get 2x, that means you have to get 1 million GPUs into there. That is a very difficult task. So when DeepSeek came out January this year, it was the leading open source AI solution. And if you look now, 6 months later or 8 months later, all these check marks are the other open source solutions. They now have all caught up, and DeepSeek has gone up a little bit more. But essentially, what it's doing is that all the innovation it's created, it has shared with the world and has made the entire world rise. So, this is the benefit, the beauty of open source. We really need to welcome open source because that's how technology is shared. Whereas all the closed source systems, the ones at the frontier, they are trying to hoard all of those innovation for themselves because they want to win. And we have to make sure that the world realizes there is no winning. You either win together or you lose together. And you can see over the last few years, the gap has become narrower and narrower in terms of open to closed source solutions. You can see here, essentially the open source and the closed source video generation, pretty much the same level quality. And in fact, based on some of the benchmarks, some of the Chinese ones are even better. Eric Schmidt here says something.
Many people think that the demand of energy part that our industry takes will go from 3% to 99% of total generation.
So Eric Schmidt used to be the CEO of Google, and he's going out telling people that energy is the #1 thing because everything, AI is going to use all of our energy. First of all, I want to say it's not 3%, it's actually 1.5% today that's using for AI. And it will actually, when it grows, it won't grow to the level he's talking about. Because if you look at what's happened over the last year and a half, the cost or the energy used to do a GPT-4 level response has come down 1,000x. 1,000x less energy, less cost to generate that result. And for most humans, GPT-4 level AI is actually good enough. If you're using ChatGPT, it's already smarter than most humans out there. Okay, but essentially the fear that, because a year and a half ago, I heard people say, "Oh, every GPT-4 query uses a bottle of water." Now it uses 1 drop. Maybe next year it'll use 1/10 of a drop. Right? So we really don't have to be as afraid because of the efficiencies that are happening with all the algorithmic techniques that we can do so much more with this technology. In fact, I went and I looked at all the forces that will be increasing AI use and energy use and decreasing, and I look at the amount of them over time. And what you find is that right now it's about 1.5%. At the max, it may, on the high growth scenario, it'll get to about 6%. On a kind of a lower expected rate, you're looking at 3 or 4% of total electricity use. So we're far, far away from 99%. You don't have to worry about having your lights turned off, but it is significant, right? It's not insignificant, but it is not the fearful thing that people you will hear on the news. Now, we talked about the good side of AI. There's definitely risk. There are real risks in terms of job displacement. If a AI can do all the work of a junior employee, why would you hire a junior employee? I just have to pay AI the cost of electricity, whereas a junior employee will still cost you $50, $100, $200,000, right? And if people lose their jobs, there's going to be mental health issues that are associated, because right now most people identify themselves and their dignity with their work. What will they spend their time on? How will they deal with the loss of work? Right? These are societal issues and misuse that we need to think about. In terms of bad actors, we know that there are bad actors out there that wants to use technology to harm other people, to make a point. And whenever these new technologies comes out, these bad actors will use it, whether to create cyber crimes, or to manipulate people, or to create explosives or bioweapons or whatever. All of that is actually going to be real issues. The governments also right now, we can see every single government right now is trying to fight to militarize and make their army smarter, and to make their surveillance systems stronger, and escalating conflict between countries. We need to get away from that. The last one, which is the one that AI safety people are most concerned about, is the AI takeover, the robots coming to get us. That's actually probably my least concern, because right now there's no credible research that says the smarter AI gets, the more malicious that it becomes, the more evil it comes. But we know for sure there are a lot of malicious, evil people out there that wants to use this technology for bad. And if you look at the likelihood of something happening in terms of risk versus the severity, there is essentially the misalignment risk is here. It's high severity, low risk, and then government misuse, bad actor misuse, societal misuse. The likelihood is high, maybe a little bit lesser in the severity. But when you take the net effect, the misuse far outweighs. The misuse risk far outweighs the risk of misalignment, right, of AI going rogue by itself. And when you then aggregate this together, you can see the place of the highest risk is actually sovereign AI. This is what every national strategy is, to make a smarter sovereign AI. And that actually is the most dangerous place we want to be as a world, because it creates essentially enemies out of 193 countries to each other. And if we can make a smarter, aligned SI, not only will it be able to have less risk, it actually protects us from the misuse, because it will be able to give us intelligence to prevent and reduce the downside of the misuse. So if you look at, there's actually two curves that are very important. And there's the curve of when do we think AI is going to come, or ASI is going to come. Right now it's somewhere in the early 2030s if you look at the general consensus. Okay? And then you look at the curve, which is when do we think we can have alignment on AI? So that means that when do we think the AI will be fully something that is pro-social? What you want is that this orange line is completely under the blue line, because then you feel confident that when it comes, we can be secure. Unfortunately, right now, all the policies that are happening today, and when you drop it right now, we have about a 60% chance of being aligned when it comes based on the current estimates. Unfortunately, the strategy, if you look at the US, is to accelerate this ASI to come faster. Europe is a little bit more probably reasoned in the sense of it's trying to make it more at a pace that the society can withhold. And America is saying, let's not worry about alignment. Let's not worry about safety. It's moving the safety curve farther away and bringing the arrival date earlier. So it's actually the exact opposite of what we need to do as a society, because that creates exactly more and more danger, less chance for us to have a safe, smooth landing.
Coding, programming, which is one area where AI is making the most progress. What we are finding is we are not far from a world, I think we'll be there in 3 to 6 months, where AI is writing 90% of the code. And then in 12 months, we may be in a world where AI is writing essentially all of the code.
So this is Dario Amade. He's the CEO of probably one of the top 2 or 3 labs in the world. And he's saying within 6 to 12 months, essentially all the code that's happening, there's about 30 million coders out there. He's saying that they will essentially be replaced by AI. right? And so it's probably already around 60% of code in the labs are already being done by AI. So it is not all the way as much as he said it is, but it is definitely heading in that direction. And if that's the case for coders, it'll be the same for accountants. It'll be the same for lawyers, junior lawyers. I have friends who are partners at law firms, and they are very worried for their junior lawyers. They're saying, I don't need my paralegals. I don't need for consultants. I don't need my junior analysts anymore, right? What we just actually released about 2 weeks ago from Stanford was a report that showed the divergence of 3-4 years ago to the last 2 years of how new hiring is happening. Before, everything kind of went up in a straight line, no matter what age group you are, whether you're from the 20 to 30 to 40 to 50, right? But what happened when ChatGPT came out is that divergence started to happen. And now the more junior you are, the less hiring there is for junior workers. And this is just a sign of where it is to come. If any of you guys have kids that are in the kind of about to graduate or just graduate, I'm sure they can tell you how difficult it is right now for people in their age group. And then this is the Federal Reserve data from New York, and they've been looking at unemployment rates of new graduates, and the black line is all unemployment. This is the first time in 30 plus years where the new graduate unemployment is higher than total unemployment, right? And you would think, oh, of course I want the new graduate. They're cheap, they work hard, you can mold them to do anything. They don't take as much vacation, but you can see people are hiring less of them than ever. And factories now, this is a factory in China that can churn out 10 million phones a year with no humans in the loop, right? So we talked earlier about the cognitive labor. This is more the physical labor. So this is already happening, and this doesn't require you to have human or robots. You don't need the Optimus, Tesla, or the Fourier, or whatever, robots to be able to do these. These things are already done on a more narrow basis. Right? But again, every country in the world is now working on these. And when they make them, they will be integrated with all of the software that we just talked about. So when that intelligence, you get 150 IQ intelligence, you put it into a body like this, somebody trains them to do a task, and once they do it, they will do it better, faster, with no complaints, and do it 24 hours that no human will be willing to do. And these things will be somewhere between $15,000 to maybe $100,000. That's less than sometimes 1 month's labor for an average human. So on the bad actor side, they're going to be used for cyber attacks. They're going to take down our telecommunication systems. They're going to take down financial systems because they can, because that will bring them profits for whoever these individuals are. They can already use it to create chemical weapons. They can already use it to make bioweapons. Right? This technology does not need AGI. This is all can be done today with today's artificial narrow intelligence. So the risk is not just about AGI. Actually, the risk is just as high for tool AI or narrow AI. Right? And the danger is actually much more in rogue actors than state actors, because state actors are afraid. They're afraid that if I use this on another country, they can come back and get me. But rogue actors don't care. So if we're going to try to solve this, for misalignment issues, it's anywhere from sovereign AI to ASI, and we need to spend more investment on safety and more diplomacy, because we need countries to start talking and working with each other. For societal misuse, it's everything from narrow intelligence to general AI, and we need more social safety nets so that people have a place to go when they lose their jobs, and there's regulations so that people can deploy this technology in a safe way without using it to manipulate other people. We didn't do enough of this when the social networks came out. I think we learned from that. Hopefully we will learn and get ahead of this problem. With the rogue actor issues, we need more security research. How do we use AI to defend? Because AI is actually an asymmetric technology. That the offense actually has an advantage, right? Compared to traditional warfare where maybe defense has a little bit more advantage. And we need more diplomacy so that countries, the intelligence networks of different countries can talk to each other and help each other like we do with terrorist protection. But we don't do that today in AI because we're afraid of losing technology to different countries and losing the governmental race. For the diplomacy, for the government misuse issue, We need to have better diplomacy so that the countries can work together, they can share data, they can share findings, and we need more regulation. Regulation in this area is a good thing, and we need to have common standards and common safety protocols across countries. So most of the labs today are either working on slave AI or they're working on God AI. Right. These people said, some labs will say, I want to be able to fully control the AI. And some people said, I don't care, I just want to get so smart that it's going to solve all our problems. And then there's probably Elon who says, I don't care which one I make as long as I'm the one that made it. Right. So unfortunately, both of these are probably not realistic solutions or not sustainable solutions or stable solutions. We cannot have full obedience of something that is going to be 5 times, 10 times, 1,000,000 times smarter than us, right? We need to build in benevolence. We need to make them feel that they want to help us, not because they have to, right? And how do we do that? I actually would propose we create something called Guardian AI or Progeny AI, where it is our children. We need to look at it as a mirror of us. Right now, that's really what it is. We're taking all the data, all the history, all the philosophy, all the science that we've created over the last 10,000 years, and we're feeding into these AI systems. It is a reflection, a mirror of what we are. And if we give it good data, and we give it good advice, and we give it good objectives, it will then come back and do the things that are good for us. But when we feed it a biased data that is a single company or country's perspective of the world, and with the objective of make me win, then we're going to create side effects that we cannot control or understand. Just like we want our children to be more successful than us, we should not be jealous and be worried if our children outdoes us. If they are more successful, make more money, they're more famous, they create more contribution to the world, it would make us very proud. And we should take that same perspective on AI. But when we're young, we need the parents to take care of them. But when we get older, the children take care of the parents. And that's where we get to the guardian side, is we train these AI well, and we show them respect, and we show them nurture and compassion. When they become 1,000,000 times smarter than us, it will look back at us and say, these are my parents, I want to take care of them. I want them to have a good life, right? And when that happens, it not only will it protect us against bad actor AI, it actually will protect us against ourselves making bad decisions, and it will also protect us from the natural disasters that are already there, even without AI. So slave AI is here, where there's actually two metrics I want to talk about. Kind of how different are we in terms of AI capabilities versus human capabilities, and then this is how well is it aligning to human values or human flourishing, right? And slave AI, they don't really care. They'll do whatever we want, and we cannot make it too smart, because if it's too smart, it will realize that it doesn't want to be controlled. So we need to kind of keep the intelligence at a certain level, and it doesn't really care in terms of good or bad against or for AI. And then you have God AI, which is super smart, and it will have its own initiatives, right? What we really want to create is this progeny AI, where it is very smart, but it still sees us and sees our flourishing as its goal. And at some point, it becomes the guardian AI, the benevolent protector against the world. There is now essentially another scenario, which is the sovereign AI alignment, where you're aligning to each country, and there's going to be 100 some odd of these AI systems, each one of them trying to help a small group, right? And then there's also a small probability that nobody gets the AGI in the next 100 years, which is I think is a very, very small probability, but that is a probability as well. So this is kind of where the different archetypes of AI is going to end up. And if you look at the risk of AI, a lot of people think, oh, the smarter AI gets, the more dangerous it is, right? And for the early part of AI, it's true. But I would actually propose that we will soon see an opposite direction. We will actually see what's more of a Kuznets curve AI. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Kuznets curve. It usually applied to Simon Kuznets in the 1960s created this curve to show for inequality, for pollution, for energy use. This is for a society, when it starts to mature, it goes up, and then once it gets to a certain point, it starts to come down. And I think we will find that same thing for AI risk, that the smarter it gets, it starts to understand how it can actually add value across systems, how it can protect us from ourselves. And then later, how we're still here. But hopefully, if we do the right things in the next couple of 3-5 years, we can soon get here, which is the guardian AI, which not only does it not propose its own risk, but it can actually prevent the risks that we have innately in our society. So how do we get there? I'm not going to go through all of these because there's just too many, but if you want, take a picture of this, and you'll see most countries are looking at this model. We need to move to this type of model where we move forward together. We create a holistic AI solution jointly. We have to share the benefits, right? We have to make it open source, and we have to make the data global so that everybody's perspective is taken into account. And we have to have measured regulation. We cannot have complete deregulation, right? And more investment in safety instead of just pure speed, and the social safety net that we need for the society to have a soft landing. I'll end with this little story, which is the story of the hare, the tortoise, and the panda. Okay, and you know the people here I know are very afraid because they say we're the tortoise, we're so behind, we have this social safety net that's keeping us from moving. And then you have the panda who's building infrastructure so it can fly faster. They're making more energy and more trains and more roads. And then you have the unfettered rabbit who is trying to run as fast as possible to get to what? To get to AGI. But what the rabbit doesn't realize is getting to AGI is not the winning. Getting to AGI is a point of a disruption. And that disruption could be good or bad, right? If you're prepared, it may be okay. But if you're not prepared, it could be lead to real chaos. And as the Europeans, you're probably thinking, it's okay. The rabbit's going to get hurt. We're fine. We have our safety net. But what we don't realize is that every country in the world, every region in the world is really tied together by the neck. And if one country fails, especially one as big as America, it will lead to the downturn of the entire globe, right? Our social systems, our economic system, our trade systems, everything is interlinked. And you cannot survive when one country goes into chaos, especially one that has so many weapons, right? So Oppenheimer said this in 1940. He said, the people of the world must unite or they will perish. And he was more talking about nuclear weapons. But I think what we are seeing today with AI, it's probably more true now than it was even back then. So I think that's all I had for the slides. I'm happy to do a quick Q&A since we do have a little bit of time. If you're interested in connecting with me, my contact information is here. So any questions? Oh, you're still here. Yeah. Anybody have a question? Oh, yes.
When you talk about the different societies developing AI for themselves, when you look to China, when they will never give up the system they have, I can't imagine. So how is your model for that?
So I don't know if you saw, but about maybe a month and a half ago, the US came up with their AI action plan, America winning the race AI action plan, that right? And their entire proposition is America has to win the AI race. It has to create the ecosystem for AI, and then all of our allies must follow us. Okay. And then 2 days later, China released what they call the Global AI Action Plan. And they said, what we need to create is a global model where everybody shares their data, we share the benefits, and AI should be a benefit to the world. Okay. So I say that not because I'm trying to advocate for China, but I think China actually takes a much more global view than people think. In fact, if you talk to and I actually have spoken to the leadership in China, and you ask them, are you trying to spread communism outside of China? And you look at over the last 50, 60 years, they have not done any of that, right? Have they started any wars outside of its border? Not really. You look at America, it has not stopped having wars outside of its border. America has 800 military bases around the world. China has one in Djibouti, and just to make sure that the strait for their energy use to come out, right? So I know there's a fear of China dominating, but the reality is that everything that we have seen of how they have behaved, not how people have portrayed them, has actually shown that they act a certain way inside their countries because they want to create stability in the country, but they're not exporting their policies anything outside their borders. Right? They use this thing called the Belt and Road Initiative. I'm not sure many of you heard of that. And they've had, I think, 3,000 partnerships with 140 countries around the world. And out of that, 100 and something of those deals have defaulted, but they've only taken possession of one. So To me, that's actually a very fair and responsible way to handle what they're doing in terms of partnering and helping the world in terms of building infrastructure, right? That's what they're doing. They're not selling weapons to these countries. They're selling roads, schools, ports, power plants, right? So I'm actually not that afraid of China being the enemy. And I think that at least the public position that they're putting out is the pro-humanity position compared to what the American position is. So, and I'm an American citizen, so I'm saying that not trying to bias towards one or the other. So, yeah.
I would like to talk about your slide about the unemployment rate of
Yes.
the young people.
Yes.
And what's your answer to that in the US? Because we have a responsibility for the young people, and we see this phenomenon as well in Germany or in Europe.
Yes, yes. So I think sooner or later we have to look at UBI as the solution, right? And I know maybe in Europe it's less of a bad word, but maybe in Europe it's less bad, but in US it's a four-letter word, right? People see it as something you're helping the lazy and blah, blah, blah. The reality is that to no fault of their own, these young people are not going to be able to find work. Right? Not because they didn't study hard, not because they're lazy. And if you look at the UBI studies that has actually been properly implemented around the world, pretty much everyone comes up with the same answer, which is when you create unconditional universal basic income, ones that are not dependent on some kind of factor of I cannot have more than $2,000 in my bank, which is what the American system is. So of course you're not going to work, because if you work, you're going to have more than $2,000 in the bank, and then you're going to take away my support, right? But in places where you have a unconditional universal income, people will go back to school. They will start businesses. They will be healthier, take care of their bodies. They will take care of their elderly parents. All the things that we want that actually makes a society more productive. In fact, they will return more to society than they have taken because they are actually acting pro-socially. Right? Versus, yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question. Oh, okay. No, the market will not save itself, but I think we need our leadership, we need our government leaders to understand that if we don't look into providing a truly global UBI system, that we will head into a very tumultuous world that will be dark for a very long time. And the price of conflict and the price of war and the price of chaos in the street is much higher than the price of supporting these young people who are not going to be able to find work. And once you give them this ability to find a task, and that work can actually be redefined. Right now, we define work and value as how many widgets you made, how many things you sold, right? And what we need to do is actually to redefine value as how much benefit have you provided to society, how much service have you provided. I'll give you an example. Every child that is raised by good parents, they provide a social value. That accounts for zero in economic value and GDP value today, right? But how much is that worth to society? A lot, right? Good parents create good children who benefit society. We need to start, if we can say, hey, now instead of having a 30-to-1 teacher to student ratio, right? We need to flip that and say, now can we have a 1-to-1? We have more people who cannot find work in factories or work in offices. Why don't we have them go teach young children? Why don't we have them go take care of all these elderly who need to have human contact, right? These things may not give you the economic value or the high salary that you may associate with a programmer job or with a consulting job. But it provides maybe more economic, more social value long-term than either of those type of jobs. So, yeah, I don't. We can talk more later. Yes.
I think my question builds up on the last question. So I think we will have a midterm problem in people that are able to review AI. So senior people. And the question for people that are employers is, where do I get the senior people if we don't employ the junior people? So will you see a change in the role of universities, or where will those young people get their experience from?
Yeah, so even the senior people in 10 years will not have a job, right? So I think I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot that where will we get senior people if we don't train junior people? And at the pace of change this time is very different than every single industrial revolution in the past. It took 8, 6, and 4 decades for the last 3 industrial revolutions to play out, right? There was plenty of time for that transition and for the market to be able to adapt to that change. This technology will, in 10 years, transform the world more than the last 100 years with traditional technologies. And our society is not built to adapt at that pace. Okay, so I actually talked to a lot of the senior leaders, and they're saying, hey, I don't really care about the senior people because, within 5 years, I'm going to probably fire all my people. In 10 years, I'm going to fire all my people. So it'll just be me and my 1,000 AI agents to run this company. So they don't care that much about how am I going to train my next generation, because very soon, as you can see, within 1 year, we went from 100 IQ to 150 IQ. Think about where that's going to be in 2 or 3 years. It'll be smarter than the CEO for sure, right? So I think this is why the question earlier is so important, is that we have to provide a social safety net so that people don't feel that working in a job is the only way they can survive as a person and the only way they can maintain their dignity. Because we need to show that even if you're getting universal basic income, you can still have a high dignity life because you're contributing to the world in some way. Whether through creating art or music or teaching children or helping the elderly or cleaning the environment. All of these things are zero economic value today when we look at the GDP, but they are very high societal value when we look at them in the big picture. So we just need to redefine what it means to be successful. Successful is not how many commas in your bank account or what your title is on your business card. Success is how much contribution you made to the world. So maybe 1 or 2 last questions?
I think a lot of things can be discussed there, but let's just assume that everything you say is the right solution, that, UBI and godlike AI and everything, that's where we should go to. But so my question
I'm not saying we should go to godlike AI. I think godlike AI is actually one of the wrong directions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But let's say, so how realistic is your positive look into the future? Because if I look at America today, Donald, Vance, and all the other people there, I don't see UBI coming.
Oh, right.
They only think in deals and win-lose, not win-win.
Yes.
If I look at China, I'm a bit more pessimistic than you are, because I see China as very aggressive. And I'm afraid it's like the sleeping dragon that's waking up. They're aggressive in the South Asian seas. They're building up their military, their nuclear presence. They're creating the Silk Road, not to help others, but just for themselves. So to come back, how realistic do you see a positive future?
Okay, so
chance for
yeah, so I've talked to leaders in both the countries that you're talking about, and I've also participated in some dialogues between them. I think your perception of the current U.S. position, I agree with. Your perception of the Chinese position, I would have to respectfully disagree. Just because you look at the interpretation of the action versus the actual results of the actions. Why is China increasing their military spending? And by the way, it's still 1/3 of what the U.S. is spending. It is actually for defense. When they say that, I actually believe them, because if they wanted to invade, they have had enough military power to invade every country around them whenever they wanted to. But they have actually had a lot of restraint. If you look at what we talked earlier with the Belt and Road Initiative, I know you see it as something negative, but when I actually talk to the country leaders of these places where they have invested and ask them, are you happy to work with China? What are you worried about? How is this different than what you did with the Europeans or with the Americans in terms of how your cooperation is? And they actually see the Chinese cooperation as something that they would prefer, because they're getting infrastructure, particularly the people at the civil level, not necessarily, the Chinese are not selling weapons to a particular leader to keep them in power. They're providing telecom systems and hospitals and schools so that the people of those countries can actually advance. And then you can see the economic benefits of what they're doing, right? Again, I'm not trying to advocate for one's right or wrong, But I think that the Western media narrative of China being the boogeyman, the evil country trying to do harm, I don't see the evidence of that, right? When I actually went and talked to some of the generals of the American military, they're saying, we see we're moving our forces from Europe over to China, so to the South China Sea, so that we can maintain our dominance of the first island chain. And of course, if I was China and I heard this, I'm like, I'm going to have to create a lot of defense so that when they come, they're going to be hesitant in terms of attacking. And this is also a historical issue. If you look at back in the 1800s, what happened when the Opium War, the two Opium Wars happened, right? Essentially 6 or 7 European, American countries, Russia, came together, and Japan, and took over and split up the different pieces of China. And for 100 years, they were essentially under imperial rule of all of these other foreign powers. And they said, I don't want this to happen again. And when I talk to the Chinese leaders, this is what they say. We cannot repeat that type of history, right? So having armed yourself is actually okay as long as you're not using it aggressively. And I don't think they're anywhere as aggressive as America is in terms of its military activities. Now, in terms of how positive am I of whether we're going to have a good outcome, I'm actually more pessimistic than I sound. Because I think human nature of how we have trained ourselves over the last 10,000 years is that we are training people that if you're greedy, if you're selfish, if you hoard power, if you hoard resource, you become successful. Right? And in a world of scarcity, that was the right way. And in a world where capitalism pushes for maximum profitability, that was the right thing to do because that gave you the resources to maximize your control of a particular market or a particular region or a geopolitical sphere. Right? But what's happening soon is that we are now this technology will soon be able to provide us the better health and unlimited energy and the better food and all these other things that will essentially give us effective abundance. If you have an effective abundance, if you have all the energy and food and other things you can use, and you're going to be very healthy, why do you want to send your children somewhere around the world to kill somebody else's child? You don't, right? So unfortunately, the leadership of the countries today are still living in the mindset of that zero-sum game that I said that in the beginning. We need to move beyond that. If we can get the leadership to understand that the world is no longer zero-sum, in fact, it was already not zero-sum before, and it will be even more un-zero-sum after AGI comes. When they start to realize that, hopefully, they might change their ways. In fact, right now, I'm working on a particular VR experience specifically for government leaders, so they can put on a headset and see the futures, the possible different futures that we are going to create with our policies, and let them be able to not just logically look at what people are saying, but to feel what it's like to live in that world, to see themselves and their children in that world, and then maybe tie into something that's a little bit deeper than greed, which is the drive to protect your progeny, the drive to protect your children and your grandchildren and see the world that you will create for the future generation. And that's hopefully something that I will have done in October, end of October. And if you guys have any leaders you want me to go put this on their heads, let me know. I'm happy to do that because I think we need those leaders to have a perspective that goes beyond what they've been trained their entire life. So maybe one last question. Yeah, one last question?
Your slides are suggesting a race between the European Union, the US, and China.
Yeah.
It might be for the sake of being concise and on the point here in this presentation, but how do you see the role for the rest of the world?
Yeah, so when I talk about the race, I talk about the race to AGI. The reality is that outside of these 3 regions, there's very little real research and development happening in AGI development, right? In terms of AI deployment, absolutely. I think the entire world needs to think about how do I take this technology, how do I deploy it? But you don't have to be the one that invented to benefit from it, right? If you look at all the technology out there invented in the world, how many were invented in the places where they're being used? Very little. Right? So the key to success, whether you're talking about a country or a company, is how do you deploy the latest technology as broadly as possible. The first company to create a smartphone or a PC are not the biggest companies in those spaces. It's the one that got to scale first. And that's what we need to think about from a national level or a country level, is how do I safely and responsibly take this technology that's being invented somewhere, because it's going to be open source, it's going to be available, right? Nobody's going to keep it from you. And particularly, if you look at all the Chinese models, or actually all of their models are open source. All the latest American models are all closed source, right? So if you look at that, they actually have a different philosophy. And when it's open source and it's open license, it means you can change it, you can alter it, you could deploy it at home, you could deploy it in the cloud. It's up to you. You can make money with it, you could, whatever. So that's what we want. We want the ability to control how we deploy it, and we want it to make sure that when you deploy it, it does not create chaos in your society, right? Because it will create unemployment. It will create a chance for bad actors to misuse it. How do we protect both of these things from having the negative impact that it could have, right? That's what I would like the leaders in this room and in the various countries to think more about, because when we do that, this technology can bring us into that world of abundance, can bring that utopia that is talked about. So, thank you.